Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the board meeting for September 23rd and ask that you all please rise and join Chaplain Larry Mendugo from Ventura County Fire Protection District for the invocation.
Good morning. Let us pray. Almighty Creator, we give you thanks for this beautiful day and this great county that we live in. Please watch over all young men and women who serve in our armed forces, especially those in harm's way. Protect those who drive within and through our county, and may this county be a place of peace and welcoming to all. We ask you to continue to give wisdom to our county supervisors as they lead Ventura County. Give your peace to all those who bring issues before our supervisors, and may all decisions be for the greater good of all. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you. Supervisor Parks, would you like to lead the pledge? Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second on the minutes. Any opposition? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Agenda review.
Madam Chair, there are only two minor changes on item number 9. You have a substitute page with a correction of one word. And on item number 15, in your agenda, that showed as District 2, and it should have read District 5.
Okay. Board members, agenda?
Madam Chair,
yes?
if possible, if you could hold the closed session before the time that it's in the agenda at 11. If you could hold it earlier, I would appreciate it. I have something wrong with my eye, and I want to go see a doctor.
Okay. We can do that. Let me do it as quickly as we can. Any other board members on the consent agenda or agenda? Okay, consent agenda, item 8 through 21. Do I have any cards on the consent? Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Brings us to public comment time. And I have some cards. Okay, thank you. Okay. For those who aren't used to being here, you have 5 minutes. There's a warning light up on your podium. When the yellow comes on, you've got 30 seconds. At the end of that, I will ask you to stop. First card is Amy Hagan.
My name is Amy Hagan, and this board has had 6 years to find the proper location for funding and political will to build an Institute of Mental Disease in this county. Now you suggest putting it in the middle of a neighborhood to save money. It's certainly not a convenient location for most of the residents of this county. It should have been built on the site with Las Posadas and Villa Callegas as soon as Camarillo State Hospital closed down. That remains the perfect location for this facility because of its proximity to the transitional housing already there, its central location within the county, and its safe distance from both the new college and any neighborhoods. Now that the Foothill Rehabilitation Center is being closed down, we once again have desperate families of conservatives trying to find housing for their loved ones in this county. I have a great deal of respect for the families advocating this facility because, like them, I am a parent who puts the safety of my children above all else. Unfortunately, many conservatives who end up in these facilities do not have families involved in their care. They've been committed involuntarily by the courts because they are deemed dangerous. These people are ill, but the County of Ventura has determined that they are also potentially dangerous. They can demand to be released at any time, even if they're in the midst of a psychotic breakdown or suffering a major substance abuse problem. As long as they can articulate to a judge that they know how to get to a homeless shelter to feed and clothe themselves, they can be released. And what's going to happen to the violent criminals and sex offenders from Foothill now that it's being closed? Are you going to tell me that these patients won't ever end up in Ojai? I'd love to hear that as a public statement. And for your information, most people in my neighborhood bought homes next to an honor farm run by the Sheriff's Department for low-risk people serving out sentences of less than 1 year for things like DUIs. It was changed into a medium security prison in 1999 without any public notification or input. The honor farm I bought my home near could now evolve into a locked facility for severely mentally ill people deemed by the courts to be dangerous, guarded only by medical staff, and with the potential of having the criminally insane added to it at any time without public notification. These facilities have high escape rates and curbside release. This board can't do anything about either of those facts, other than to acknowledge them and use common sense when finding the location for this facility. The middle of a neighborhood is not appropriate. If money was really the only barrier from building this facility on Lewis Road, here's a suggestion. Sell the Ojai land, use the money to build an IMD on Lewis Road next to Las Posadas. It's the responsible, moral, and smart thing to do.
Thank you for your comments. Jack Borkowski.
First, I want to say good morning to the members of the board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Jack Borkowski. I live in the city of Oxnard, to be specific, the Silver Strand area. I am the current Commodore of Channel Islands Yacht Club. All of you, I hope by now, have received a copy of our business plan regarding parcel D2 in Channel Islands Harbor. In that program, you will see there are several pages with regarding the history and a summary of what Channel Islands Yacht Club is all about. What I'd like to do at this morning is to give you a kind of a brief summary about that. In further commentary, I will refer to Channel Islands Yacht Club as CIYC. CIYC was born of an idea in January of 1960, which is over 40 years ago, which puts us in a position of being unique as being probably the oldest tenant in Channel Islands Harbor. CIYC was established with the purpose to promote the interest in all forms of boating in Ventura County, and specifically Channel Islands Harbor. CIYC was the first yacht club to establish a youth sailing program in the harbor. Excuse me. CIYC has been a consistent player not only in harbor activities, but also in helping preserve the areas in and around the Channel Islands. Over the past 40 years, CIYC has grown from what was a small one-room parcel on D2 to what it currently is today, strictly through members' contribution, work, time, and labor. With membership that exceeds over 450 people, spouses included, CIYC represents both a substantial work group as well as a financial benefit to the harbor communities and those around us. CIYC is more than just a club. CIYC is a large family. It even extends beyond the borders of California. As our members travel around the world, they have an opportunity to exchange information with other yacht clubs and inviting them to this area. This is evident by the number of other yacht club birdies that we fly in our club, which exceeds over 150. Now it all has come down to this. 10 months ago, our membership voted overwhelmingly to secure a separate lease for parcel D2 and to totally own the current facilities. Given that chance to do so, we feel that there is no reason for what we have done in the past can not only continue on into the future for the next 40 years, but continue in a substantial way to help and benefit the harbor more so than we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Evans Hughes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Evans Hughes, and I live at 2201 Pebble Beach Trail, Oxnard, and I'm here today representing Channel Islands Yacht Club. A little in the way of background, prior to my semi-retiring in Ventura County, I had the opportunity to function as a senior executive for 2 Fortune 100 corporations, during which time I had direct responsibility for generating marketing and sales programs producing $2.3 billion a year in annual revenues. I've also owned and operated 2 successful companies, including a 50-mile regional railroad. Currently, or since arriving in Oxnard, I have been Commodore of Channel Islands Yacht Club, Commodore of the Association of Santa Barbara Channel Yacht Clubs, which is an organization of all the yacht clubs from Santa Barbara to Marina del Rey, and I am currently on the board of directors and serve as the Chief Financial Officer for Channel Islands Marine Research Institute. I'm here today to make 3 quick points. First, Channel Islands Yacht Club has the financial resources to purchase its existing building and to enter into a lease with the county for parcel D2. We are a very stable financial organization and have been so for 40 years. That track record sort of demonstrates that we not only have the money, but we have proven the fact that we can do what we say we can do. One of the major factors that enables Channel Islands Yacht Club to do this is our members' participation. Members at that organization contribute time, material, money, a lot of it. For example, in 1986, when the Yacht Club wished to renovate the entire inside of the building, our Commodore at that time is also a prominent real estate developer in Ventura County. He estimates that renovation would have cost $600,000 if we'd have done it outside. He did it for a little less than $100,000. The second point I'd like to make is we have paid for and built over 80% of the current structure. Our membership feels that that's our, quote, yacht club, end quote. And the final point I'd like to make, kind of lost my train of thought there. We make a significant economic contribution to Ventura County. A conservative estimate of the yacht club's direct contribution is about $1.5 million a year. Our indirect contribution can be in the range of up to $10 million a year. We need your help. We would like to purchase the building, and we would like to enter into a long-term ground lease because we think that permits the yacht club to truly move forward and to plan for its future. It becomes a stable organization. Thank you for your attention, and we certainly would appreciate your help.
Okay, thank you. Dan Voss.
Morning, Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Dan Voss. I'm a past Commodore of Channel Islands Yacht Club in 1988. And everything was said so well this morning. There's just one point that I want to make this morning if I can. And that is the Channel Islands Yacht Club is entirely different than a lessee down there for business. Every major developer that went down there for business has either gotten in trouble or sold and moved on. Channel Islands Yacht Club for the last 40 years regenerates itself every year with new people. And every year, as evidenced by today, we have the same enthusiasm that we did 40 years ago, and we'll have the same enthusiasm 40 years from now. We'll be here to do everything that we've been doing for the last 40 years. And we have the ability to do the technical work and create the financing to do what our yacht club needs to be an active yacht club member in the Channel Islands Marina. Unlike a company that's down here for profit, the balance sheet doesn't work, it goes broke, and you're stuck with them. Here, we're going to be here, and that's the only point I'd like to make. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I have no further cards for the public items, so I will close those. And did I hear something? No. We'll move to board, pardon me, to board comments. And if I might, I'd like to lead off with a resolution proclaiming Ventura County Fire Protection Week. I won't read all the whereases. I think we're all very well aware of what our fire district and its personnel does for our safety and protection of property. But I think we need to hear what the theme is this year. So whereas the Fire Protection Week 2003 theme, when fire strikes, get out, stay out, is an important reminder for all citizens in Ventura County. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Ventura proclaim the week of October 5 through 11, 2003 as Fire Protection Week. This week is commemorated across North America and supported by the public safety efforts of fire departments, schools, and other safety advocates in conjunction with National Fire Protection Association. And with that, I'd like to ask Diane Morgan if she would step up and receive the resolution and give us some words of fire protection wisdom, and also if there's any activities that will be happening in conjunction with the week.
Chair Michaels, board members, Mr. Johnson, I'd like to start by thanking you for your continued support of our fire prevention programs. Our efforts in the area of fire prevention are a valuable tool in reducing the loss of life and property due to fire. Fire is still a significant problem in the United States and is responsible for killing thousands of people each year. Fires in the home account for most fire fatalities, killing 8 out of 10 of those who perish in fire. Fortunately, home fires are highly preventable. With increased awareness of fire hazards and education about early warning and home fire escape planning and practice, residents of Ventura County can and will be safer from home fires. We know that public safety education works, and just having a smoke alarm cuts the risk of dying in a fire nearly in half. A well-rehearsed fire escape plan cuts the risk even more. Our goal for Fire Prevention Week is to underscore the importance of 2 safety points. Respond quickly when a fire alarm sounds and remind everyone that once safely out, they must not return to a burning building for any reason. We have several activities planned in the community this year. We are partnering with our Home Depots. Firefighters will be available at the Home Depot stores throughout the county to communicate with the public. If you go to our fire department website, either through the county government website or through fire.org, you can see the different activities that we have planned throughout the county. And again, I thank you very much.
I have no comments other than to request that the Board of Supervisors close the meeting in honor of the following people on our list. I'll submit to the clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'd like to submit a list to the clerk of the board for the board to adjourn in memory of. Thank you.
Supervisor Bennett?
Thank you. I'd like to just take this moment to remind everybody that's listening, including ourselves, that we may get a decision about whether the recall election is going to take place or not, which we're all wondering about because it affects the timing of when the next shoe will fall for us, since all of the candidates have announced that they will try to modify the VLF tax, and we don't know what those budget implications will be for us. So today is a big day from that standpoint. I would also like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly that is the impact to us to look at what that next shoe will be. So we are awaiting that decision and the many others in front of us in the next month that we'll be faced with. And I'd like to take just a moment to thank the representatives from the Channel Islands Yacht Club from coming down this morning. It's frankly good to hear from people who have hope and care for and caring for the work of this board, and really looking what we can do to provide a revitalization to the entire Channel Islands Harbor, and appreciate your sincere interest in participating in that revitalization and your support for your membership in your club's history. Appreciate it very much. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. And I have no comments this morning other than to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the person on this list. And with that, I've had a request. I was looking for our, hello. I've had a request to move item 37 forward. Our investment personages has an appointment, and if we don't do it now, we never know when it could happen. So with the board's permission, I would like to bring forward the report of investments ending the month of August 31, 2003. And we'll take that item, and then we may go into closed session. Depends on Mr. Flynn.
Good morning. Bob Hanson, Chief Investment Officer, County of Ventura. When I last spoke to you in July, I told you that I hoped that the curve might steepen slightly, which means that intermediate and long-term rates would go up, so that we could take advantage of some sort of yield, if there is any in this type of market. We did, since then, from last month, we went out 41 days longer on our average maturity, so we're out to 237 days. We were able to capture some of the 2 and 2.5 year bonds as they blipped up. Interest rates in general, 1/3 of our portfolio is on the Fed funds rate, and as you might have heard, the Fed's latest meeting, they left rates at 1%. They don't anticipate raising rates for some time. I would guess maybe second quarter of '04. They have to be very careful that when they do raise rates, if at that point they have any fear of inflation, that they wouldn't stifle the growth, because we've had 2 years of a very sluggish economy, and the last thing they would want to do is raise rates and slow down any type of major recovery. I think in general the market, the stock market and the economy looks pretty good. The numbers are starting to come in. Problem is, in all of these recoveries, at the end of the cycle comes employment. So what's really holding it up now are the jobs. We need about 200,000 more jobs per month to keep this thing at its pace. And until the Fed sees something like that, they're not going to do anything. So with that in mind, we really don't have much to look forward to rate-wise, because as I stated earlier, 1/3 of the portfolio is at 1%, and then probably the other 2/3 is put into agencies, and that is in the 2% area, so that would give you a yield somewhere around where we were last month, which was 185. That's really all I have, unless you have any questions.
Mentioned jobs. I'm trying to hang on to my own job.
Okay. There's a few people like that around. One thing I did want to mention also, occasionally I'm asked about LAIF. That's a $60 billion state of Cal fund. LAIF stands for Local Agency Investment Fund. We don't compare ourselves to them because they have different parameters and their investment policy is somewhat riskier than ours. So they aren't a benchmark that we use. And when you start comparing yourself to other people, if we would have compared ourselves to Orange County at one point, we might have looked bad, because higher to some people is better, but higher sometimes can mean more risk. But the point of this comment is that in running the numbers, we've surpassed LAIF for the last 28 months. So that's a good thing, but if we don't, we're still happy, because we keep in mind that as far as the taxpayers go, we want a very high level of credit first, marketability second, and rate is our third criteria. So that's it, if you don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Appreciate the report. And no, we're not Orange County, and never were even close. I have a motion. Second. Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. With that, I'm going to take the board into closed session from now until our 9:30 time certain, in order to accommodate Supervisor Flynn, who's having an eye problem and needs to get to the doctor for a 10:15 appointment. So with that, we will go into closed session. On the items listed on the agenda, we will return at 9:30. Okay. Okay, I will call the board meeting back into session, and we will have item 22, Supervisor Long, a presentation of a resolution congratulating and acknowledging the 30th anniversary of Interface.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to invite Chuck Watson, please, down to the podium so we can celebrate and acknowledge Interface, Children Family Services of Ventura County, and their 30th anniversary. And I hope that Mr. Watson will tell us about the celebration party that's going to take place in Camarillo to have a community celebration of the 30th anniversary. But all of us are very familiar with the outstanding work of the Interface Children Family Services. It was founded in 1973, and it has for 30 years provided quality services for children, families, and individuals throughout our entire county. They began as an agency responding to the destruction of families due to drug abuse, and it's evolved over the years into a comprehensive, integrated services agency providing intervention, counseling, prevention, education, shelter, employment, and treatment services. They provide wonderful, outstanding, and effective programs for abused children, battered women and their children, runaway and homeless youth, families in crisis, and at-risk youth. Interface partners with volunteers, professionals, and community resources, providing affordable, accessible services 24 hours a day, touching the lives of more than 278,000 residents of our county each year, organize and train over 1,200 community volunteers that provide direct services to all of the programs, enabling those programs to provide a quality of service because of the people who care and give up their time and expertise. Interface has a distinguished history of being administratively competent, fiscally sound, and accountable nonprofit organization by successfully completing or exceeding contract obligations for hundreds of federal, state, county, and foundation grants and contracts without audit exception. And that's outstanding to say in this day and age as nonprofits always struggle with making sure that they run highly efficient operations and complete their mission. And we have, as the board knows, many contracts with Interface that we work closely with them in partnerships with our human services agencies and other programs. Interface has received numerous national, state, and local honors, the latest that of being named in 2003 by the Child Care Planning Council of Ventura County as one of the 10 most family-friendly employers in Ventura County, and has also been recognized for its programs and management systems that are innovative, responsive, cost-effective, and specifically designed to meet the needs of the residents of Ventura County. In recognizing the major work that requires the development of working relationships with other agencies throughout the local community and the state, and Interface in its collaboration has shown that it has a purpose of coordination and non-duplication of services and again, commitment to the mission to serve our community. So the board, in acknowledging the 30th anniversary of Interface, for being an organization of people helping people by turning life's challenges into solutions. And that's very much indicative of what their 30-year history has been in this county, and it's my pleasure to present this on behalf of the board. And please, Mr. Watson, if you share with us the celebration and who you have with you today.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of the Board of Directors of Interface Children and Family Services, our volunteers and staff members, to receive this proclamation. 30 years is a long time and a short time. I was going back through the years and trying to remember all the things that have happened during those 30 years, and I guess it was in 1973 that Skylab was launched, and I guess that's auspicious for us, looking high into the heavens and making great things happen. We are indeed having a celebration on the 28th, which is this Sunday, from 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock. I would invite anyone who would be interested in coming, in particular any of the board members and their families who would like to come. I have a special in for you. If you give me a call, I'll figure out a way to get you into the event at real low price. At that event, it's going to be at the Adolfo Camarillo Ranch. I'm told that California casual, which is the dress code, means that I don't have to wear a suit and tie, so that's good. It's being catered by Command Performance, and Steve Hill from Ventura is coming to play for us. So that'll be a good time. Many of the longtime supporters of the agency are going to be there. We're honoring some the top 30 donors. We're honoring some board members who have been around. In particular, Ted England is one of our founding board members, and he's still on the job, so we're really pleased with him. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to being there.
Okay, thank you. Item 23 is a presentation by Supervisor Flynn of a resolution honoring Our Lady of Guadalupe School for receiving National Math Model School Award.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. If we could have Mrs. O'Reilly come forward and have the students all come forward too. And the parents, if we have parents here.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Okay, they're all shy. Okay, here we go. We changed this, huh? Madam Chair and board members, we have this morning a resolution to honor Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, and I'd like to read some of the whereases. We have Mrs. O'Reilly here, who's the principal of the school, and we have some parents here, we have teachers, and of course we have the students. So we welcome all of you. Thank you. Whereas Our Lady of Guadalupe School has met the educational needs of children from La Colonia and other communities since it was founded in 1906, and has therefore been instrumental in the upbringing and education of generations of students, and has also, by its long-standing devotion to the educational needs of children of agricultural workers, provided them the tools necessary to make their way in the world and to therefore become successful and productive citizens. And whereas Our Lady of Guadalupe School continues its long-standing remarkable success in educating young people into the 21st century, as evinced by the status of the National Math Model School for 2001, 2002, and its receipt in 2003. And that's what I noticed when I walked by the school the other day. I noticed this big banner that had this award identified on it, National Math Model School, for those years I've mentioned, and of the California Reading Model School Award, both awards the result of the school's adherence to the highest academic standards. And so there's some more whereases here. So we're proud, number one, of the principal. The principal is simply outstanding. I say that because of the reputation that you have and the numbers of people who've talked with me about you, and also the church leaders, and also the teachers and the parents and the students. Each one of you is being honored today because of the way you work, the way you study, the way you behave in the school. We're all very proud of you. And so we're going to give this resolution to your principal, and we're honoring you. We hope that you'll find a place to put this resolution so it'll remind future students that they have to win an award like this too.
It is a delight for 7 years to be one of the principals of one of the finest schools in Oxnard has to offer. I'm not only delighted to be their proud Irish principal, but at the same time to be able to present to you one of the ladies that helped me be successful is my vice principal, Miss Cordelia Kenny, who's been there for 28 years, who has helped me in the last 7 to make it successful. I bring with you Consuelo Hernandez, who is a nationally ranked teacher in our nation for not only reading and math for the last 3 years. She too here is pole vaulting these kids into getting them as successful as possible. Our parents include, not only here to the left, alumni who's here, Mrs. Munoz, and parents that are just committed, truly committed to Catholic education in Ventura County. Our Lady of Guadalupe wants to take the next step, and hopefully in the next 2 years you'll see some more progress. But most importantly, I'm proud of these kids, and they have one thing to tell me. Give me an O. No. Give me an L. No. Give me a G. G. Who's got the best school in Oxnard? O-L-G. Thank you on behalf of Our Lady of Guadalupe. We appreciate everything. Thank you. Speeches. Yes. They're all finished? I'll have to figure it out. Supervisor Flynn.
I think he's coming to his appointment, maybe.
He shouldn't have, not this soon. Well, at any rate, we're going to go ahead and move through as much of the rest of the agenda as we can, and then we'll do our into closed session out for special presentations, back and forth that we do. So the next item is item 29, approval of an agreement between Ventura County Fire Protection District and River Park. Hello.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson. I'm Abby Burns with the Fire Protection District. We're here before you today to get approval for an agreement between the Fire District and River Park. As you'll recall, about a month or so ago, your board approved an agreement between River Park and the county for the relocation of the county yards. As a separate legal entity, now the district comes before you with an agreement for replacement of the fire station that's located in El Rio. The agreement basically states that River Park is responsible for all of the costs associated with the replacement to replace and meet our current operational requirements. Anything that is above that or is an enhancement that the fire district wishes, the fire district will pay for that up to a limit of $750,000. The second agreement that is before you is an agreement between the fire district and the city of Oxnard for the operation of a joint facility on this site. And the city of Oxnard, their city council approved this last week on September 16th. And in fact, we have replaced the first page of the agreement that you were given, since ours had September 23rd and the dates need to match. So we now have an agreement that will be dated September 16th of 2003.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, what's the action of the board?
Move the recommended action.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is Human Services Agency, item 30, recommendation to appoint new members to the County Workforce Investment Board.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Johnston. We are asking this morning, my name is Amy Fonzo. I'm the Deputy Workforce Area Director, otherwise known as staff to the Local Workforce Investment Board. We have 3 potential appointments this morning for you. The first, Mr. Steve Kenny from the Economic Development Corporation of Oxnard, and 2 one-stop partners, including Ted Myers, Director of our agency, replacing Barbara Fitzgerald, and Francisco Dominguez, Director for the Center for Employment Training. These fill some mandated vacancies. We still have openings in the private sector that we are currently recruiting for.
Okay, questions?
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move the recommended actions.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 31, acceptance and approval of a grant award from the Ventura County Children and Family First Commission.
Good morning, members of the board. Mr. Johnston, I'm Pamela Grothy. I'm representing Children and Family Services Director Linda Henderson. And I'm here with a good news item with an opportunity to expand services to the families who come in contact with the child welfare system through family group decision making. It's an opportunity to involve families to a greater degree than we are often able to do. Through family group decision conferencing, we are able to bring families together to participate in brainstorming, developing solutions for their families that are often more creative than ones that we come up with on our own. They help develop safety plans and permanency plans for children. We're able to bring families in from out of the area with these grant funds, and we're really excited about being able to expand the pilot program that we started that just got rave reviews from all of the participants. We ask for your approval.
Questions?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a grant that's going to go towards salaries and benefits, but obviously it's not a sustaining grant that will continue. So is there something being done to assure that individuals aren't going to have to then be laid off or
Well, it is a 3-year grant period that we expect. During those 3 years, we have some exciting changes coming on with child welfare that will probably allow us to shift the way we're doing business to do more of this kind of work and be able to, I hope, garner additional state resources to be able to continue this program. We're able to access uncapped Title IV-E funding for half of the costs of the salaries and benefits. So it's the other half that we need state and local match to offset. So I think the options or the probability of being able to continue this are fairly high.
Thank you. Good luck. I'll move the item.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Good news. Thanks.
Item 32 is a recommendation of Supervisor Parks to reappoint Irene Mellick to Mental Health.
Yes, I'd like to move that we reappoint Irene Mellick. She's been a wonderful addition to the Mental Health Board.
Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. And I would move the recommendation to appoint the individuals listed on the agenda to the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Council. I have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Item 34, presented by the Sheriff's Department. Approval for the Sheriff's Department to add a deputy sheriff allocation to serve as a school resource officer. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Captain Rick Heinman, and I'm here to seek approval to add an allocation for Deputy Sheriff to serve as a school resource officer. This is 100% revenue offset by the school districts.
Okay. Any questions? Got a question first, sir.
I certainly fully support providing the service, and if somebody's going to pay for it and all that. My question is about the how we are internally accounting for the positions. This is a request to create new positions. And at the same time, we have $2 million that we set aside in a mitigation fund to deal with deputy positions, with potential layoffs for deputies. So my question is for both you and the CEO, why are we scaling positions back and at the same time creating new positions? Why don't we just take one of these deputy positions here that's scheduled to be eliminated and move it right over? I see the auditor even's perking up. So anyway, but
would you like me to take a stab at it? I think that it's. I spoke with the staff this morning on this, and they said that it could be done either way. The reason it was being recommended to be handled this way is that we have been working with the Sheriff's Office in cooperation on the mitigation plan, and they are keeping those positions all carefully tracked, and that these are new positions that are revenue offset. And so it was the feeling of the staff, and I presume the Sheriff's Department, that it was cleaner to do it this way. But the board has the choice. It would be a different transaction on the creating the new allocations. But that was the reasoning for it.
All right. Looks like we have some other, you want to offer
Yeah,
comments on
apparently
this?
this is one of the allocations that we gave up in June, and since we gave up that position, now we're seeking to put it back so we do have a place to put that officer on our sheets.
Okay, but we could just move a current officer into, we could just have a current officer that's scheduled to be laid off that we're trying to hold on to so that just attrition does that. Couldn't we just move that position over and do the same thing? Go ahead.
Yeah, mathematically you could do it either way, but we think it's cleaner just to have a record of those positions that were added. The other system already shows that that position was given up, and just to keep it clean and not create more confusion about which position actually went somewhere, because in doing that, there isn't a direct connection between this board letter and the position that is going to be filled. So.
Okay. I guess one of the concerns that I have is that somebody will say we've cut X number of positions and fail to point out that we've at least added this position and any others. But CEO, you're recommending going the clean way?
I always recommend the clean way.
And when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah, right. I think what the sheriff's office is suggesting, what we refer to the clean way, is over time, when you net things out and it's sort of in the numbers, then when people come back looking for the trail to how things were done, it creates suspicion between the parties. And since we seem to have a pretty good working relationship right now where everybody understands that the feeling, Mr. Womack's in the audience, that we need further backup, but his recommendation and the staff's, which I would support, is that keeping the books clear. But we should all remember what the Supervisor Bennett is pointing out, that there's a difference between allocations and actual positions and vacancies. And when we get into some of the political conversation, it can become confusing when someone says, I'm losing 100 positions, and to the public that sounds as though we're cutting 100 people from staff, when in fact maybe historically only 14 of those positions were filled. I'm not addressing this specific thing, but I'm just saying that's the kind of confusion. So the reason for trying to keep the records really clear so everybody knows what the deal was and that everybody's living up to their end of it.
My other question deals with the issue of overtime and using vacation pay, those kinds of things. How is that budgeted in here? I mean, we basically have a significant amount of overtime built into the system. Let's say that the deputy who's assigned to this position can't show up for a while, and we have to have other deputies come and do this, and we have to pay them overtime to do it. How is that? Help me through how that.
This is set up as a 40-hour position. Basically, if the deputy calls in sick, there isn't a replacement behind him.
So there is no overtime with that.
Correct. I mean, if he discovers a crime on campus or something that generates overtime, that could create overtime, but if we had a crime on campus, it would generate overtime for any other patrol officer responding to the crime. So it's a wash in that respect.
Have these school positions generated much overtime request?
No, not very much, other than special details which they pay for, like your football games.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the important thing is that you cover all the costs.
Correct.
Because there's supervision costs, that's in there.
Yes.
Well, the only question that I have, and I'm very supportive, and I think this is the better way to do it because it's dedicated, and we know what this officer's position is for, but are these tagged with the fact that they're 40-hour jobs, and if El Rio School District or whoever it is, the two school districts, if they choose not to fund this officer next year or the year after, whenever that could happen, and it has happened with city budgets or school district budgets, what happens to this position then? Is there a way to remove this position because it's a purchased position? This is not a kind of one of our regular.
Right, with it being a contract, should they, right now they're saying they're going to go ahead in the following years, but should they change their minds and say we're no longer interested, then yes, that position would go away because we don't have a mechanism to fund that.
Okay.
The position is based on the funding.
Yeah, but do you have a way to track that?
Yes, we track it.
Because you've all heard Excedrin headache speech number 37, which is we have fixed-term positions or we have these dedicated positions and the grant funding or whatever goes away, but the positions never go away. And so that's my concern, just so we know that we can track these. Okay, any further questions? Pleasure of the board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item is yours as well.
Sure.
Okay, that's Deputy Sheriff allocation for the City of Fillmore. Item 36 is also Sheriff's Department. This is a previously submitted grant application from the Governor's Office of OES. I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Staff is here. Any concerns? Seeing none, the motion carries. We've done item 37. We are now at item 38. I have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Seeing none, the correspondence will be received and filed. Right on time for 10 o'clock. Well, 3 minutes early. So if they're here, they're ready. I see Captain Colwell out there and the contingency. How are you, sir? Good morning. County Council, is there a problem with taking this slightly before 10 a.m.? We have no cards on the item.
No.
Okay. You're welcome. And this is a resolution honoring the United States Navy Seabees annual Seabee Days celebration. Can we hear a hoorah?
Hoorah, Seabees! Yeah, right.
Okay, Supervisor Long.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite the captain forward and a recognized former county leader, employee, Bob Quinn, too. I'm going to give him a chance to have a little time on the mic here this morning. But certainly a pleasure to invite the captain here and the folks with us today to celebrate and recognize this weekend. We're going to celebrate the United States Seabees that were instituted in Port Hueneme 61 years ago on the recommendation of Rear Admiral Ben Morrell with the simple motto, "We build, we fight." And the 31st Seabee Readiness Group, along with other commands at Naval Base Ventura County, have mobilized thousands of Seabees, both reserve and active, hundreds of pieces of equipment, performed this effort safely and in direct support of worldwide mission. And the Pacific Seabees and the Naval Construction Force have attained exceptional success in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Port Hueneme-based Seabees have also played such a significant part in our community in the many hours of support that they've given in direct construction efforts for the Rain Transitional Living Center in Camarillo, Habitat for Humanity housing in Piru, and as positive role models in many ways in Ventura County. So the public is clearly invited, and it's really a wonderful celebration to get out and to really see the base and the excitement and operations at the base, and to celebrate Seabee Days September 27th and 28th. See firsthand the military accomplishments of naval construction battalions known as our Seabees. So with the board in commending our United States Navy Seabees for 61 years of outstanding service to the nation and our country in peace and in war, and encourage the public to please join in on the Seabee Day celebration. And Captain, please speak and join us.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks to the board. Good morning, and thank you for this proclamation recognizing the Seabees. I'm very proud to be here this morning to represent the Seabees, and I brought a few Seabees along with me who you'll get a chance to be introduced to here in just a few minutes. Yeah, I will. And I want to thank the citizens of Ventura County for all they do for the Seabees, for providing over the last 61 years such a great place for Seabees to live and Seabees to work. We've been here for 61 years, and it's been a great place for Seabees to be home ported. You know, in peacetime, we deploy all around the world to build things for other countries that aren't as fortunate as ours: roads, bridges, wells, schools, all around the road. Kathy mentioned some of the things that we're able to build here in our own community for our own people, and Seabees really enjoy doing that. While deployed, Seabees are also poised to respond in a contingency or in wartime to whatever the National Command Authority may call on them to do. And Seabees did that in the latest Operation Iraqi Freedom, and we've got some of those Seabees with us today. I'd like to introduce Bob Quinn, who's no stranger to Ventura County. He's here representing the Seabee Historical Foundation, and the CB Museum, which captures all those things that CBs do all around the world and displays them right here in Ventura County.
Thank you, Jim. Supervisor Michaels, all the board. On behalf of the former CBs and Civil Engineer Corps officers, we also want to thank the board for this recognition of CBs and their efforts, and certainly also join everyone else in encouraging folks to attend CB Days. If you can't make it to CB Days, remember we do have a wonderful CB museum on the base, and we're embarked on a $12 million project to build a new museum that will continue to tell this wonderful CB story here in Ventura County in a world-class manner with a totally subversive, that's not the wrong word, totally immersive type environment, modern state-of-the-art museum. And we encourage all of you to support that operation as you're supporting the CBs. And thank you again for recognizing the CBs.
I'd like to introduce, there are a whole bunch of CB commands in Port Hueneme at CBC, but one of them in particular got a lot of press coverage recently. We had an embedded reporter with Mobile Construction Battalion 4. I'd like to introduce the commanding officer of Mobile Construction Battalion 4, Commander Jim Worcester. If you could come forward, Jim. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come down this morning and for this fabulous recognition of the CBs here in Port Hueneme and in the area here. My name is Jim Worcester. I'm the commanding officer of Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 4, and I had the fortunate opportunity and the pleasure and the honor of leading NMCB 4. You'll have to excuse me for a second. We just got back from the war, and I haven't had the opportunity to speak publicly too much, although I know that some opportunities are going to come up. And I've thought about this concept of decompression, which we talk about when we get back from the war. And every troop gets to go do that, and I wondered how mine would be, and I knew it was going to be like this, because it's not that I'm nervous here this morning, it's that I've never felt such pride in so many people in all of my life. So if I can get it together here, I'm going to just say a few great things about some great people. We, the battalion NMCB 4, had the opportunity to start the war at the line of departure between Kuwait and Iraq. We moved forward with very closely linked with the 1st Marine Division, and we moved forward to Baghdad. We were the 1st CB battalion of the 5 engaged in the war to reach Baghdad. And along the way, we built a bunch of bridges. Actually, we built 5 bridges very directly in support of the Marine Corps effort in its assault on Baghdad and movement north. Those bridges facilitated the movement of men and material and the logistics train necessary to sustain the war during the war and after the war. After the war, we moved back south from Baghdad into a town called Adiwania and Najaf. And Najaf you may have heard of recently, in that there was a very large mosque that was destroyed there by some terrorists. But that was a significant town for the Shias in the south, and we operated out of Najaf and then a town called Karbala as well. And what our battalion did then was set the standard for the reconstruction effort, a model that was picked up by the coalition forces and the effort in Iraq by the United States government as sort of the model and the way to do business in terms of reconstruction. And we did that very quickly. Now, when I say we, what I really mean is 600 men and women who every day got up and spent 18 hours of their day committing themselves to that effort. And they did phenomenal. And it's those people, all 600 of them, that I believe are heroes that deserve absolute, as much recognition as we can possibly give them. I brought 3 of those people here with me today, and I'd like to introduce those. We have Petty Officer Cheryl Currier, CM3 Cheryl Currier, who is from Thousand Oaks here as a CB, is not far from home. Petty Officer Courier is a mechanic, but she served as one of the prime communicators in my combat operations center, and really was my eyes and ears on the battlefield. And without her, I could not have made the decisions necessary to do what we did and to succeed the way that we did all along the way. Also, we have here this morning is SK2. He's a storekeeper, Petty Officer Randy Lovett, and he's from Illinois, but he wasn't the storekeeper in the war. He was a security platoon commander, a squad leader, and pretty much kept us safe. And he was one of the best squad leaders that I had out there on the battlefield. Also this morning is brand new Chief Petty Officer Clovis Tennis, who is from Missouri, and Chief Tennis is one of our big heroes here, and that he led. He was an assistant platoon commander that put those bridges together. And there were days when he would work 48 or 72 hours without sleep, as did the remainder of his crew. And they made us all a success, and they made the Navy a success, and they made the Seabs a success. And that is why we feel so good and why we have the pride that we do in these people here. So, again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I apologize for kind of choking up there a little bit, but it's all a matter of pride. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we share your pride, and you never need to apologize for honest, heartfelt emotion. Thank you for all you've done and all you continue to do, all of you, in serving our great country. Thank you. Photo op.
Thank you for recognizing these proud CVs this morning. And I'd like to invite everyone out to CV Days. You'll get a chance to see some of these fine CVs out on the grinder who put on the kickoff event. Will be the parade at 1100. But you'll also get a chance to see an example of the bridge that Commander Worcester was talking about. We've got a training bridge there that's assembled, so you'll get a chance to see a lot of the CB expeditionary facilities that they built in Iraq. So come on out for CB Days. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I might just quickly, look forward to that, and please, if you do, take a moment to go and visit the existing CB Museum, and you'll see also, I believe, some of the dreams we have for the new one. Yvonne Bodel is with us, has joined us this morning also. She and Bob Quinn and I had an opportunity to really raise the level of the interest on this campaign. You'll be hearing more about it. It's a wonderful project. It will really give us the opportunity to have a living museum on site in our county that really talks about this history of the Seabees and really demonstrates and shows it'll be a great learning center and all the right reasons to raise this money for this campaign. So appreciate the board's time on this.
Okay, thank you. Captain Colwell, one more time for the Seabees. Yep. Okay, the next item. It's always such a pleasure to have our men and women in uniform visit the boardroom. Item 25, public hearing regarding Ventura Riverbank Protection Upgrade Project Final EIR.
Good morning, Chair Michael, Supervisors, and Mr. Johnson. For the record, my name is Jeff Pratt. I'm with the Watershed Protection District, and I'm here to present for your consideration the Ventura River Bank Upgrade Final EIR with a recommendation for your board to certify it and adopt a statement of overriding considerations on the noise impacts. The project's about 5,300 feet of levee along the town of Casita Springs and the Ventura River. It's a levee that's been in place since 1978. We're raising it about 3 feet and taking most of the township or I don't know how you say that, Casita Springs out of the floodplain. All impacts associated with the project construction have been mitigated to kind of a less than significant level with the exception of noise, hence the statement of overriding considerations. And that concludes my brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the project.
Okay, are there questions? Okay, I do have one card that I just lost control of. Mark Capelli.
excuse that little colloquy there. My name is Mark Capella. I'm with NOAA Fisheries, and we've submitted a couple of letters on the project. A letter on the notice of preparation addressing some issues regarding the scope of the analysis, and then subsequent to the preparation of the draft, another letter on the project and the draft EIR. We're basically supportive of the project. It's been, I think, carefully designed, and as was indicated by the previous speaker, most of the impacts have been mitigated. The one issue that we would like the board to consider is the issue of revegetation along the levee. Currently, there is a proposal to revegetate a portion of the levee at the north end. It's several hundred feet, I believe. But the remainder of the levee below that right now is maintained in a vegetation free state. There were some questions about the viability of revegetating or allowing, that's more, I think, accurate, allowing the levee below to naturally revegetate because of the availability or the unavailability of water. A portion of the levee is bounded by free-flowing water. The lower portion, right now at least, is not, and revegetation there naturally or artificially would be difficult. But there are sections below where there's now a proposal to allow revegetation that I think would be amenable to revegetation, and we'd like to see that element of the mitigation expanded to include those areas as well. And I took some photographs this weekend, and I just gave Jeff a copy of them that shows the upper section where the revegetation is now being proposed to be part of this project, and then the lower reach that where it is not, that is bounded by flowing water. So just like to give you some idea of what it is that we're looking for in terms of additional revegetation opportunities as part of this project. That really concludes the remarks I wanted to make. If you want to take a second to look at these two photos, the upper, or the first one, is looking upstream. You can see there's already in one section of the levee a revegetated area. This was actually a mitigation site for another project, and the Watershed Protection District has bounded off an area marked by two stakes where they would not engage in vegetation management, allowing this section of the levee to naturally revegetate. And the proposed additional area is that little whitish spot in the upper end that would be allowed to revegetate as part of this project. But the area that I'm referring to is the area that's below there, that is bounded by running water, and it extends just about to the upper end of the Arroyo, I think it's Arroyo Verde trailer park. I'm not sure if it's Arroyo Verde. It's that trailer park adjacent to the levee. I'm not sure the name of it now. At any rate, there's a section there of I'm not sure the exact length. It might be 1,000 or 1,500 feet that would be amenable to natural revegetation. The response that we got from our letter indicated that we were proposing to artificially revegetate, but what we're really looking for is to change the vegetation management so these barren areas that are adjacent to the flowing water would be allowed to revegetate, as was the demonstration or the mitigation project site immediately upstream of this, and the new site just north of that. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or if Jeff wants to respond.
Thank you for your comments.
Maybe that would be helpful for your
Thank you for your
deliberations.
comments.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no other cards, so I will confine the remarks to the board. Mr. Bennett, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, I'd like to have Mr. Pratt come up. I'd just like to have you respond to
In general, the response is this. We're only required as part of the project to do mitigation where we had impacts. We added mitigation on the water side of the levee in order to kind of enhance the mitigation that we were doing. We are loath to plant at the toe of the levees or within levees because there is a point in time where the vegetation becomes a liability, both from our ability to inspect the facilities during heavy flows and the ability of heavy flows to pull the vegetation out along with the riprap and cause failure of the levee. So we've avoided, where we can, the planting of vegetation. We think we've covered with the additional 450 feet of planting area. There's 450 feet that's already on the water side that we're letting the plants grow in where the water is. And there's an additional 450 feet proposed by this project. And we think we have plants where the water exists and where it is likely to be most successful. And we think that that actually enhances the mitigation that we are suggesting be provided.
If I could just clarify, my understanding is that the work we're doing primarily is on the land side of the levee. Is that correct?
It is all on the land side.
And yet the mitigation that we're doing is on the water side of the levee, which is sort of the more valuable mitigation?
A portion of that mitigation is on the water side.
Is on the water
Correct.
side. Okay. All right. And you feel confident that we're engaging in more than adequate mitigation on a one-to-one basis in terms of the disturbances we're doing on the land side where it's not as critical?
Yes, sir. In fact, on the land side, we're doing 3-to-1 for our permanent impacts and 1-to-1 for the temporary impacts. So we feel confident that that meets the spirit of the regulation.
Thank you. This is a for the members of the board, this is an important project. I think that everybody recognizes it's important. Certainly the people in the mobile home park are very concerned about trying to get proper protection at this point in time. And if we come up with funds down the road and we can do other mitigations, and I know we're doing a lot of mitigations we're going to be doing a lot of mitigations in the Ventura River, hopefully with the Matilahaw Dam and enhancements, et cetera. I feel comfortable that we are meeting both the spirit and the letter of the CEQA requirements here, and so I'd move the recommended action.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much. The board will take a 10-minute break. Then we'll finish the last 2 items and then go into closed session and stay there till we're done. We have 2 10:30 time certains. This will be probably the only time for a break for a while. So. Could I have the board come back to the dais, please? It's a little past 10:30.
Oh, I know. 2.5 hours later, it took me 3 times longer to get to Burbank.
And see, and that's happened to me, and now you're stuck because your car is in Burbank. Now that I've totally messed up my agenda here with my paperwork. Okay. Call the board back into session, and we will do our first 10:30 time certain. Item 26, receive and file the oral written status report regarding human resources and payroll system project. Good morning, Mr. Carroll.
Members of the board, Mr. Johnson, Chair Michaels, Matt Carroll, County Chief Information Officer. It's hard to believe, as you recall, it was 15 months ago we first, the members of what now is the Payroll Project Steering Committee, went to the Information Technology Committee and recommended that we replace the county human resources and payroll system, and delivered our business case to that committee. And it's almost exactly 1 year ago today, on September 24th, we were before your board and presented the final recommendations and project proposal and contracts to your board for approval. So with that background, it's hard to believe it's been a year. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Project Steering Committee, members who are behind me, and will be available at the end to answer any questions you may have. But to present you a brief status on the payroll project implementation. Specifically, let's see if I can work a PowerPoint still. Specifically this morning, we want to cover the project goals just as a refresher to remind you what our goals were for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the project. Talk about our accomplishments to date, go into a bit of specifics on our timeline for Phase 1, financial status, and then discuss some challenges and issues that are outstanding on the project, and there are a couple still in front of us. I have about 7 slides, and the good news is you've already seen 2 of them. It takes about 10 minutes to get through this, and then we'll open it up to any questions you may have. To refresh your memory, we broke our project into 2 phases. Project Phase 1, which had a goal, a public goal, and one we stated before your board to implement the primary human resources, payroll, system modules, and benefits in the first quarter of 2004. More specifically, we wanted that first paycheck to come out during the first quarter. Now, internal to our project, we realized we could save quite a bit of effort if we didn't have to do a mid-year conversion. So we took it upon ourselves to do an internal goal of the first paycheck of the first calendar, or the first pay period of the first calendar year, 2004, is when we want to produce our paycheck. So that was the culmination of Phase 1. This is still a strong possibility at this point in time. However, given some of the challenges and issues we're going to discuss today, we may need to push that back sometime into that first quarter, and we'll know for certain in about 30 days or so, and we'll give you a feel for what the issues we're pursuing or facing at this point in time that may impact that date. Secondly, to the first pay period, 2 other goals we had in this first phase were to pilot the data entry of the personnel action form within several departments in the county. That's the Human Resources, Sheriff, Fire, Auditor Controller, ISD, and healthcare agencies. Now, these are the primary forms you fill out that initiate new hires, promotions, transfers, terminations, and currently those are filled out on paper in the departments. They're sent back to HR and the Auditor Controller for review, processing, approval, and then finally entry into the system. Part of this pilot for Phase 1 is to take advantage of the PeopleSoft decentralized capabilities in this area and try pilot data entry of those forms actually within those departments or some subset of those departments. Additionally, we wanted to pilot the time and labor data collection. As you know, right now, most employees fill out time cards. Those time cards go into fiscal clerks within the departments. They're sent to the Auditor Controller, who batches them up and sends them out to Key Punch. One of the things we wanted to pilot at this point in time, and there are exceptions, some departments do enter time online, but what we wanted to pilot also in Phase 1 was to actually do decentralized entry by some employees or minimum fiscal officers in those departments to do the actual time and data labor entry for the pay period into the system as part of the pilot for Phase 1. Now, the majority of Phase 2 after this first quarter was to actually go county-wide with these 2 pilot efforts here, as well as implement a couple subsequent modules other than the primary core modules. Accomplishments to date. As noted here on this slide, the primary human resource, benefit administration, time and labor, and payroll configuration of the system has been completed. Now, this doesn't do justice, this statement, to what this entails. PeopleSoft is made up, and any of these large ERP systems are made up of hundreds, and in our case, probably thousands of very detailed control tables that you have to define the entries for. You have to then associate those entries with how you do business, understand how they're going to be impact or how they're going to process in that system, and then go through and set those tables up, document them exhaustively, and then test them out. Well, that effort has been primarily completed within the project team, and that really constitutes the bulk of a ERP system vanilla implementation, which ours is turning out not to be. But that was accomplished in the spring, and it is no small feat. And again, that statement doesn't do it justice. Conversion and interfaces on target. We've completed the majority of our conversions, and we've tested it. They're looking very good now. That's a major effort of any major project conversion. And our interfaces are on target. We have a couple that are still outstanding, but we're on schedule in that area. And again, that's not an insignificant accomplishment to this date. Required customizations, and we're going to talk about this, with the exception of defining our time and labor rules, are complete. You will recall we went into this project with a strategy of minimizing customizations, and we were going to try to implement PeopleSoft as vanilla as possible. It turns out we were a little more optimistic, or we were a little too optimistic in that area. The majority of our deviations from standard industry pay practices, it turns out, are going to have to be negotiated away from the unions, and that is, as you know, can be an extended process. As a result, we've had to do materially more customizations than planned at this point in time. So just to be upfront with you, that has occurred, and those have been completed, the majority of them, except one area we're going to discuss. The bright side of this point is, for the first time, I think, in recent memory, and the members of the steering committee can attest to this, I believe, at this point, we now have a very clear picture for the first time of where we do deviate from industry standards. We have those documented, they're fresh in our mind, and we're going to pursue an alternative strategy of negotiating those out over the course of the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, with an eventual goal to complete those negotiations before the next major version of PeopleSoft is required to be implemented here at the county, where we'll have to reinvest that money. Typically, we're in version 8.8 right now. I think our contract allows 36 to 48 months before we're required to go to the next major release, which will be version 9 point something. So we have that period of time to make sure we get those negotiated out. So time equals money on a project. One of the things we realized very early was, if we took the time to do this now, we would have to extend the project schedule. And with expensive consultants on site, if we took that time to do that now, we would experience a project overrun. So we chose to pursue this strategy. And again, the good news is we know where we deviate at this point in time, and we have a strategy to go forward with. We'll get back to the remaining issues of time and labor rules. Just briefly touching upon the overall project timeline. This is a highly condensed timeline. Vern keeps track of thousands of detailed tasks under each of these items. As you can see, we have 14 major items that we're displaying here. We are on track or very close on the majority of these items, with the exceptions being, first, what we just discussed here. Let's see if this can work. Well, item number 7 here, which is our custom modifications. As we said, there were more of those than we anticipated, so we're a bit behind in that area. That item includes the time and labor rules, which are still outstanding in front of us. As a result of being behind in that area, we've had to deviate some staff from the report planning and design and the HRMS security tables configurations, which are relatively significant tasks. We've had to put them in the teams that were designing and determining what those modifications were going to have to be. So we've done some backtracking there. We're relatively confident we can catch up in those areas once we complete the custom modifications and get back on track in that area. With the report development, this is another area, custom report development. Typically, when you go live with a project of this type, you can defer some reports until after you've gone live for some period of time, and that's a strategy we'll be pursuing too. And it's an acceptable plan B. If we don't have all our reports defined, we'll bring them in during the first quarter of the system live date. So with that, that's a good summary of where we're at this point in time for Phase 1. With regard to project budget, the bottom line is here we're on or slightly below project budget. As you can see here, we have completed we've completed 60% of the project work and only expended 53% of the project budget. Now, this includes both phases. So if you thought, well, we're 60% complete, how can we not, or how can that be when we've been a 15-month project? That's the entire 24-month project span. As you can see at this point in time, at this point in time, we are not into our contingency funds. We have those out there at $1.6 million. We fully expect that if we do delay implementation from the first pay period, we may be into a small amount of that. We may need to invest some of that in maintaining the customizations we've had to put in. We may determine that we need 1 or 2 more staff members to keep those up to date. But I would say in general, we're looking very good with the project contingency at this point in time, deferring any major unexpected items occurring.
Could I ask a question, Supervisor Park?
Yes.
The percentage of project cost expended and the percentage of project work completed aren't necessarily related, are they? They might have more expensive items near the end, or is that a percentage of the expenditures?
The technique used in what this called, it's called C-squared in the military. This is a very detailed type of project accounting, and what it says is that no matter how good you're doing with your timeline, you need to know where you stand with your budget in
relationship to the total cost of the project.
The total cost estimated for each task you were going to complete. And so what this is saying is the total task we've completed to this date, we thought that should have equated to 60% of the project budget, but we've been able to accomplish that to date with only expending 53% of the project budget. So actually at this point we could say we're almost on schedule and we're ahead of budget.
And what percentage of your budget is contingency? I mean, what is it, a 10%? 15%?
15%. And those numbers don't include the contingency amount.
So maybe you might come in at budget.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And that would be good. Okay. Finally, the last slide, moving on to our challenges in this area. As I stated earlier, this first item, we've been forced to make more customizations than planned. Now, most of those customizations are complete except the second bullet we're going to talk about, but it still does present some potential challenges. Because we had more customizations to complete, the testing, which is now ramping up to occur in the next 90 days before we go live, could take longer than planned, and that's an issue. The other issue there, as I discussed it may take, and we don't anticipate this will be a material amount, but we may find that as a result of those customizations, the support costs, the ongoing support costs over the next several years may be higher than planned. So it is a challenge. It is an issue at this point in time. We're not able to quantify it. We don't think it will be substantial, but we wouldn't be forthright if we didn't tell you that is a potential issue there in the future. Right now, we're looking okay. Our second challenge in this area is the remaining time and labor rules development. The time and labor rules constitute the configuration of PeopleSoft's time and labor module. This is the piece of software that actually interprets the codes that the employees are going to enter into the system and says, okay, based on that hours and your union and your work group, you qualify for this much holiday pay if you worked on a holiday. Here's what you get if you didn't work on the holiday. Here's when your overtime kicks in. Here's when your overtime doesn't kick in. Here's when your FSLA rate kick in versus contract overtime. Very complex rules that are the last piece we're putting together in the customization or development of the system. Those are going behind schedule. We are and not substantial at this point. Our hope was to complete those on September 16th. And I don't want to speak for Vern at this point in time, but I think we're hoping to wrap those up by the end of the month or very early in October. So we're not months behind. We're a matter of a couple weeks to a few weeks behind. But we have a very aggressive timeline. If we're not able to bring those to bed within the last week of September, early in October, it will impact the first pay period of of 2004, which is our internal target date. So that is an issue out there, and we will know, as I said, in about the next 30 days in early October. If we don't make early October, we're not going to try to fool anybody. I want to credit our new risk manager and labor negotiator, John Nicoli. He shared a comment with me. In a payroll project, it's much better to go 90 days too late or 90 days late than 1 day too early. So we have this whole first quarter, and if that's what it takes to come online, we're going to make sure we do it right to the best of our abilities. The last item, you've heard some press on this. We've talked with the managers on this. This is the proposal to pay for actual timed work, which would result in a deferral of the pay period, of the paycheck issuance by 1 week. Essentially, right now, we go through 2 weeks in a pay period. Halfway through the second week, the employees estimate what they're going to work for the next 3 or 4 days. Come Monday morning, everyone scrambles to make sure that they correct those, and it actually reflects what they did work over that weekend. This issue would go to a standard practice now where you don't try to estimate the last few hours worked. You wait to begin payroll processing until the pay period is over. Riverside County has gone to that. Several other jurisdictions have gone to that. The issue here is saving hundreds, and I think it's higher than that. I think it's potentially thousands of hours countywide that people scramble around come Monday morning and Tuesday making those corrections. So it's really a business case, which is the primary driver here. Secondarily, the auditor controller has lived, and your board has lived, with a substantial risk lately in that we begin our payroll processing. We have to deliver our file for automatic clearinghouse distribution for direct deposits, I think 36 to 48 hours before we actually are required to issue paychecks. Right now, that leaves us a couple days window to get the pay period cleaned up and processed and that the payroll run. We have come, and unbeknownst to your board, within 2 minutes of missing that date in the past. And this is with a 15-year-old system we know well, and we've gotten most of the wrinkles ironed out of. Now we're going to go live with a brand new system, and as much as I can promise you there wouldn't be any hiccups, or we'll do our best. We have disaster recovery associated with this system far more than our current system, but there is the chance that we would have a hiccup. There's a probability we will have a hiccup, and there is a good chance as a result of that we will miss a pay period. What does that mean? It would mean they get paid a day or two late. Right now I think contractually payday is on Friday, but the practice has been Thursday, so we would have to negotiate that back. And it's that issue that we're discussing with management and the union. It's an outstanding issue. It is in no way associated with the PeopleSoft product and any shortcomings of that product. It's a window of opportunity to see if we want to go to that more productive way of pay. We do know it is a hardship, and therefore we've come up with the loan options we're discussing with the unions. The secondary thing is to buy us that window of critical time in the event that there will be hiccups in the road. So the worst case is if we can't come to agreement on this, we'll continue processing as we do today, and we'll live under that increased risk. But I would say the odds are we're going to hit that window, especially with a new system, one if not more time in this first year. So it is a risk your board needs to be aware of.
I have questions at this point. So to be clear, you're saying it's not absolutely essential that we convert January 1, if the system is up and ready to go, it's not absolutely essential that we convert over from our deferred pay program.
I would say that is correct, but I'd like the auditor, if she'd like to add to that, to speak to it, because she's the one chartered with that responsibility, and it is a substantial risk. So, Christine, do you want to add to that?
I'll ask the auditor in just a second.
Okay. It is not a hard requirement.
Okay, it's not a requirement of this project. It's a
window of opportunity.
It's a window of opportunity, but not a requirement. Have you been operating from the beginning with the assumption that this is a window of opportunity that we're going to try to take advantage of, or is this a relatively new?
It has been in the back of our minds, but we knew it was a significant step. And we wanted to really get a feel for what the elapsed run of this. We wanted to see how Riverside addressed this issue and what their final outcome was, and see how they live with it after that year of the loans.
How long has it been in the back of your mind?
Probably since the late spring.
Okay.
So
all right.
3 or 4 months we begin discussing.
Was that communicated to the board in any way? Did I miss it, or was it communicated and I missed it, or did it not get communicated?
No, I don't think we communicated at that point in time.
So from last spring, we knew we had something that was pretty controversial and significant coming up here for employees. Okay, but it didn't come out until now.
Yes.
Right. Okay, all right. So from the auditor standpoint, I mean, go ahead, you want to.
From the auditor's standpoint, this has been a problem for over a decade. The processing of payroll just hasn't had sufficient days. It is not connected with the software. PeopleSoft can do whatever you want it to do. It is an opportunity that we were trying to take advantage of, and it's been discussed publicly for at least 6 months with staff and with management. It is an issue that is trying to take advantage of the opportunity of the software in order to eliminate some of the double entry that's going on today with respect to cost accounting. And I do have some handouts that I shared with the communication pieces with others when talking about this that gives you the business case for why this is a good idea to look at this time. The calendar year 2004 is laid out in such a way that we can benefit from the timing of this proposal and not hurt the employees, because movement of 1 week on the payday alone will not short them the number of paychecks in the calendar year. Also, we were looking at additional communication early so that employees can plan for this ahead of time. We do know that October has 3 paychecks in it, and the possibility then for people to use that opportunity to set aside some funds and not have to avail themselves of an advance or a loan program.
Who is coordinating sort of discussions and negotiations with the unions in terms of this?
I cannot negotiate. I am providing information and answering questions. Our steering committee member, Barbara Jeunet from HR, and Johnny Johnson and John Nicole would be involved in the negotiations, not myself.
Okay. So a couple other quick questions. One, if we end up starting this PeopleSoft system and we don't have this issue addressed and we have to do it, let's say 6 months into the year, how difficult is that? How expensive is that to make the conversion? You know, once we're doing the system one way, we finally find out what is the solution that's going to work to allow us to make this conversion. How difficult is that from both the auditor's standpoint? And I mean, it's 6 more months of doing it the old way, but is the transition in the middle of a year very difficult? Does it have to happen at the beginning of the year? Can you help us with that?
I think we have to configure the payroll system, so there would be labor to reconfigure, to tell the system what dates to put on the check. There is not, I don't know, Vern, is there a large amount of work if we make that mid-year? So from a technical point of view, it would not be a major issue to defer that decision. But again, the first 6 months of a pay period of a new system is where we're going to be most at risk for missing that window of opportunity. So if we just want to live with that, it's a known risk we go into it. I think at this point we fully disclose that is a risk we're up against. It would be your board's decision if it wanted to live with that risk.
Okay. If I could go back, you had mentioned that this was talked about publicly. It didn't get on the radar screen of the board. Who was it talked publicly with for 6 months?
It was definitely discussed in our steering committee meetings and with staff that were laying out the projects and tasks. It came more to light when you're looking at documentation of the rules for the time and labor component of the project, trying to look at where we can streamline operations, what is at risk, at heightened risk for this changeover is that on top of moving forward with a new system and the training of all of the participants for the new system is the labor data collection for cost accounting.
If you had mentioned that you don't do negotiations,
that's correct.
But when this was rolled out, the statement was you had hoped that you were going to get to talk to the union about the solution that you had.
I did.
And so, I mean, how is that not a negotiation if you have a
I presented information and I answered questions regarding the proposal. I am not in a position to negotiate. If they are looking for other givebacks, I can't do that.
Who created the proposal then that was presented to the union?
I did.
Okay, all right. And I guess one thought I just would like to respond. I mean, my sense is that as much as it would be nice to get this done, right at the start of the year when we put in PeopleSoft, that we've got to, just like you made the comment, it's better to go 90 days late than 1 day early. It's better for us to get this right in terms of how this gets negotiated with the unions than to push this thing, and if that means we have to go slower in terms of implementing this so that we can make sure we've examined all the creative ideas about how we could handle this, because certainly we didn't get a great reaction to the original proposal that was presented to the union. And I guess I would just offer to the people involved the frustration that I felt as a board member to know somebody was making a proposal to our union members that affected the receipt of their pay, and we didn't even know about it until we read about it in the newspaper. Something seemed to be really a disconnect there with that one. So, thank you.
I have a question, if I might, of legal counsel, and I don't want anybody out there to start throwing things or get upset or anything else. But should this become a business case decision and we can't work through it, does the board have the power to implement this?
the board may have an obligation under the Myers-Brown Act to negotiate with the unions concerning the matter because it relates to wages, hours, in terms of employment. Timing of pay may very well be one of those issues. But overall, the county undoubtedly has the power and authority to time its payroll system to the needs of its administrative staff.
Okay, thank you. That came up and I wanted to know what the answer might be. Are there other questions? Supervisor Long?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Cohen, the comment you made as to the business plan and information you provided to the labor group, I don't believe that I've received that. If there's something
available here.
Okay, I would like to receive that so I can see it too, and express some of the same frustration as Supervisor Bennett, reading this in the paper and not certainly knowing there was the internal working group on the whole implementation issues, but not knowing that this had become a critical piece in the sense of a business decision that probably does make good business sense, but the implementation of it being, frankly, falling right up here on this dais. So that was very frustration to read it in the paper and not be aware of it. So appreciate the information.
One of the comments that I'd like to make, and I made this at the IT committee meeting, and that is, given the difficulty with the rules of hours and day, and we've heard this kind of off and on as we work through the labor negotiations, and we end up with creating our own difficulty by the way that we negotiate and have created a system that did need a lot more customization than we had originally wanted to do. And one of the comments that I made was a request of the project team and the auditor controller that we get a list, as they have time to develop it, of those things that create this need for customization so that we can be on the lookout for that when we're doing negotiations. And the auditor controller has said that she's already started kind of a checklist of problematic situations, because I think it's incumbent upon the board to help over the next few years roll this back into a better system, and we can't do that, and I don't believe the negotiating team can do that without the help of the software experts and the processing expert to tell us, well, you know, that's going to create a problem. It's going to create something being done by hand, or we're going to have to go back into the system and customize the order. And so I think that's something that is, I was aware of this a couple years ago, and so it's probably my fault for not being awake as we started this system and making that request at the very beginning, because we had a couple of major contracts that happened, and we've got one now that could be very helpful to us. So I think that's something the board needs to be aware of, that, you know, if we can help in the way that we authorize the negotiating team, or at least have them be aware to check, is this a real problem to do this, I think that would be extremely helpful. Did you have a comment?
I guess I shouldn't sit here and remain totally quiet on this. Someone observed once that most of the world is motivated by the fear of loss and the hope of gain. And that tends to focus one's attention on something. And I think what has happened here is that there are several pieces of this. There's a labor part, there's a technical part, there's an administrative accounting part, there's a budget part that all has kind of converged here in the last 6 months. This is not a new subject. The auditor's office, I won't say has suffered in silence. They actually have raised the question on a number of occasions, and I don't think any of us were listening as carefully back during labor negotiations, and this goes back years,
as long as I've been on the board,
where when certain provisions are negotiated at the table, everybody expects Matt's operation to technically be able to accommodate this into the automated systems, and for the auditor's office to do all the necessary coordination and programming. What has been going on is a separate issue from what has brought our focus to this. The separate issue is that for years this has been a problem and a risk. And because of the new payroll system, everybody's focus has been now placed on how we do business. As Matt points out, we now have documented all the variations and things that we have done over a period of 30, 40 years that all have kind of culminated at this point. The problem you always have in trying to deal with this in a labor context is that it is not in the interest of labor leaders and unions to say, oh, you've got a problem, let us solve it for you by in some way inconveniencing or disadvantaging our membership. That's kind of the perspective from the labor side of the table. From our side of the table, we have an obligation to bring forth the business case and to also point out the risk management case, because where we all kind of come together on this, and I'm sure that the unions will eventually, once they are fully informed and educated on the subject, is that whether any of us like it or not, there is a risk of failure of the payroll system. Not anybody's fault, it's just the circumstance that the world has now given us. And so the question, I guess, for labor will be, would you rather continue that risk and not be inconvenienced or disrupted, or would you like to plan and protect your members from that risk? We're not going to have the system fail intentionally, but we all know that there is a likelihood that it could happen. One failure of the system may create every bit as much or more inconvenience to all of our employees as for all of us to sit down cooperatively and work out a plan to accommodate this. The timeline has been created by this opportunity. It isn't essential. We can continue with the same risk we've lived with. It has maybe been exacerbated or magnified a bit because of the new system coming on, but we can live with that and take the same, assume the same risk, which the auditor controller is sitting there recognizing that when a payroll doesn't get out, guess who's going to be all over the newspapers as number one suspect. And so what we're all doing here is just kind of in open government discussing a very important issue that should be as important to unions as it is to management, as it is to the auditor. And I think there is an opportunity here to solve this, but we're still a little bit in denial because nobody is wanting to, volunteer for this. But the subject had to be brought up. It was unfortunate that it really reached its critical point for a decision while your board was in recess, but the auditor couldn't continue not to say something, and so what she was attempting to do was to educate us and the unions. We explained that we would have to sit down with the unions to talk about this, but as the world works, this was meant to be somewhat discreet. Here's a situation we need to discuss, and of course our good friends in the Fourth Estate, the newspapers, being good reporters as they are, they discovered there was some concern over the subject, and so they jumped the gun, so to speak, over the auditor being able to sit down and start educating the unions as to what this mutual problem is. And then we got such marvelous quotes as, we're violating the 13th Amendment of the Constitution with slavery, and I mean, there is no limit to the rhetoric, and so we apologize to the board, but it is something that we should have apologized even more for not bringing up, just because it would have been more comfortable. It's a subject that had to be discussed, and we apologize for the way it finally, rose to everybody's attention, but our choice was to kind of bury it for 6 months, cost the taxpayers more money, and run a greater risk that the employees will be disrupted by the payroll system. So based on a couple of bad choices, we did the best we could with them, and I appreciate both the auditor's effort as well as Matt's in bringing this kind of to our attention, and I'm hoping that the union leadership will now sit down with us and see how we can work it out.
Supervisor Parks, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did. It's just that it isn't, well, I guess we were using the word clean earlier this morning. It's not really a clean way of going about it to have employees having to estimate a week in advance as to what their hours are going to be, and I wouldn't imagine managers particularly like that either, of not really knowing and signing off on these. It's not a good system. It obviously needs to be changed. But and I also appreciate what I've read in the paper, the idea that the concept of providing loans to employees if by transferring that paycheck to a later time, it's going to inconvenience them. So to me, that pretty much would solve that problem, and I do appreciate that concept. And I think it's unfortunate that relationships are the way they are in terms of the union's receptivity to this. It may be partially how it was presented, but yes, the concept that it's enslaving employees to switch to this system. I wish we had better relationships so that we'd also have ability to work together to put a mitigation in if you do have a glitch in the system. So time is money, and it would be nice to be able to put the technology in, get this fixed with the estimating and having the ability to avoid a glitch. And it would be very unfortunate, I think, because of the relationships with the unions, that because of that, it's going to end up costing more in terms of getting the system up and running.
Well, the one thing too that could be detrimental to the members, and Supervisor Bennett, you talked about, well, what if we just wait six months? First of all, you know, if we all know that a paycheck is going to be delayed and we plan for it, we can take care of those financial things that are important. If the system fails and a paycheck doesn't show up and a mortgage payment is missed or checks start bouncing at the bank, it is going to cause so much grief. Nobody's, like you said, nobody's ever going to let the system fail purposely. But just think what would happen in your own personal way of doing business. And some of our employees live very close to the edge from paycheck to paycheck. If, in fact, your check were not automatically deposited when you thought it was going to be. And that's a whole bunch of hassle to go back with the bank or the credit union or the mortgage lender or whomever and get all of this straightened out. So, you know, it seems to me that the counting of the weeks is perfect this year. If we wait 6 months, I would assume that portion starts to fall apart because we're not starting with the first pay period, so that, you know, everybody still gets the same number of checks in the year that they were going to get. So I'm with Supervisor Parks on this one. I would hope that the unions would understand how detrimental it could be to their members if the system crashes, if we don't do this right. And I know just personally my frustration with time cards. And, you know, staff estimates and somebody gets sick or first grandbaby is born and they take a day off. You know, you can't time those kinds of things. And you have to go back and redo that. And then I have to sit there as this, you know, the approving authority and say, okay, now what happened here? Why did we do this? And so it just makes sense to me to try very hard to get this done. I do know that one of the things that bothers me the most is what we talked about, and that's the rules for calculating time off and all of those things. And I hope that as we work through the future with our employees and their representing unions, that we can smooth this out just a little bit. But now that we're aware of it, like you say, I don't think any of us paid the proper amount of attention as the years went on. We hear a comment here or there, and oh, it would be nice to do that. Well, then when you're faced with this, it's all of a sudden a wake-up call. And I think we probably will be on time, because I know a certain gentleman is retiring as soon as this is done, so he's not going to let it drag out very far. Right, Vern? Supervisor Bennett.
Thank you. I certainly would agree. There's no question we need to make the change, and we also need to try to clean up as many of these rule modifications as we can in terms of labor stuff. No question that we need to do that. I also think that perhaps while the board was dark, it was perfectly fine to begin an education process about a need for the change and the risk that is out there. What I have pretty strong objection to is that somebody didn't just educate about a need for a change, but they proposed a solution out of the range of dozens of potential solutions without the board having any input or offer any creativity. I mean, since this has surfaced, a number of things people have suggested. I went, that's worth checking out. Well, it would have made, in my mind, so much more sense to check these things out. Are they viable? Are they not? Et cetera. Because I believe what we've done is we've actually made it harder for us to get a yes from the unions by January 1 because we rolled out only that one particular proposal. So my frustration is I don't want to suggest that I hope it's going to be 6 more months or whatever. I guess I'm concerned that we're not completely in control here with this, and that's a pretty darn sensitive issue to just say, well, and this is the solution. When you put the solution with the problem, then everybody started focusing on the solution, and people didn't, in my mind, have been far better for people to focus on, wow, this is a problem, even invite their solutions. What solutions do you have before we started to roll one out? All that being said, I'd like to say we also heard an awful lot about this whole other PeopleSoft implementation. And it's a little bit like when you come home from school and you say, I got all A's and 1 C, and your parents say, what'd you get the C in? There are a lot of A's here in all of the rest of the stuff, and it's a great team effort. I think that when we think of other counties and cities and some of the messes they've gotten themselves in, for us to be this close to having a smooth implementation of this thing, it's going to be a great compliment to you and the whole rest of the team that's worked on this thing. And so that's all great, and pardon the fact that our frustration about this sort of is getting in the way of our appreciation of the other part of it.
A couple comments going forward, if I could just
Certainly.
close this out from my perspective. You can see this is our full disclosure session with you today. We're this close to implementing, and Vern was very clear up front last time in March that it's the next 6 months that all of these things will come out of the closet and we'll know. So right now you're seeing the worst of the worst up there, and this is what we know today. Anything that comes up between now and then could impact schedule, but we don't think it'll be a showstopper. We feel very good about the project to date, and it doesn't mean there won't be bumps in the road, and we'll probably be before you with our tails behind us on 1 or 2 other issues after we go live. That's the nature of the beast on here. I do want to say the project team is in great spirits. There's a lot of great work going on, and this is a point in time where most people are in despair on a project like this, and they're putting in incredible hours on weekends and nights, much of it uncompensated for the exempt types. Susan DeMaio in the benefit area and her team, Alan Bandalai in the human resources and his team, Louise Webster in the payroll area, an incredible feat going on, and of course Vern and the ISD folks. Another item that needs to be mentioned, we talked very clearly about the number of modifications, but you didn't see a raise or an increase in costs on the contract, and that's as a result directly of the auditor-controller's negotiation skills, which occurred last summer. She did a phenomenal job, and we talked about how tough those negotiations were, and the only reason the project isn't over budget right now is directly as a result of the educated positions she took and what she was able to get out of KPMG to this point. So
I didn't do it alone, Matt. Thank you.
Well, with doubling our modification estimates, we're still on budget at this point. Over the next 90 days, we're going to be focusing on system testing, really jumping into system training on a countywide basis from the ground up for staff and the fiscal officers and the admin folks and the staff. Communications, we haven't done as well on communications because we've been down trying to figure out if we're going to make our dates to this point. Well, the next 90 days we'll be focusing on communications, a website of frequent questions on the website and answers. So we're really going to focus now on rollout. And the good work that's going on, I'm optimistic we'll be successful. There will be more bumps in the road, but I'm feeling I have a job after this is done, and the members do to this point, and that's not something you can always be sure of in one of these projects. But time will tell. We'll be back around implementation time to give you another update.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Certainly.
Yeah, I would just like to be sure that we're clear. One, I'll take responsibility for not having anticipated and finessed this particular situation any better than it was. But I believe that once we have good conversations with our union leaders, they will work to solve the problem, and they are just as discomforted as your board was, as was I, when these things all came together and we had to start dealing with it. So now that it's out there and everybody's talking, I don't believe it was intended that a preordained solution was saying this is what we're going to do to you. It was this is the solution we believe will solve the problem, and it was taken as though we were imposing a solution, and that got the thing kind of spinning a little bit sideways on us. I think that there have been a lot of good suggestions that have come up in the meantime that could maybe soften this, and of course everybody's always happier with the solution when they got to actually participate in making it. So this is sort of a clumsy way of getting it started, but I commend the auditor and the team for bringing the point forward, even though it was at an awkward time, and we'll get it solved.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is a receive and file. I have a motion and a second. And is there any opposition? Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And as I said at IT the other day, it's a yeoman's effort, and we're very appreciative. And Mr. Bennett was correct. You know, it's the you always focus on the negative for some reason, and I don't want anybody walking out of here thinking that we're not happy with the team and the job that's being done. Take care. Okay, next item is item 27, presentation of a resolution honoring the Chumash Casino for their contribution to the Senior Nutrition Program. Supervisor Long.
Yes, thank you, and apologize for the delay. I should have looked at that and perhaps moved this forward, but here we are, and I appreciate that we're able to bring this and to offer this resolution on behalf of the board, and I'd like to invite to the podium Teresa Lenis, who will assist with some of this. Matthew Taylor, I see, is here also, and from our Senior Nutrition Center, and Chuck Goff and Edie Turner. And we're pleased to have present in the boardroom with us today Ted Ortega, Vice Chairman of the Chumash Business Committee, and if you'd please step forward also, and Richard Gomez, Business Committee member. We're going to present a resolution honoring the Chumash Casino for stepping forward to assist our senior nutrition program in the Human Services Agency. This is a non-mandated program, as the board knows, and it has one major purpose, and that is to protect the elderly in our communities from hunger, isolation, and to educate them about their nutritional needs. And it's the hunger and isolation among seniors is one of the fastest growing social crises of our day, and according to the California Health Information Survey, 1 out of 3 seniors living in California is at risk of malnutrition, largely due to the high cost of housing, which depletes much of their income. The program of the Senior Nutrition Program targets services to seniors classified as at risk, nutritionally, medically, and economically. And our current senior population of age 60 and over living in our county is over 114,000 seniors. The program serves more than 1,100 hot meals delivered to homebound seniors into 16 congregate senior centers every day in Ventura County, and provides a much-needed service in our communities, and private sector financial support is critical to help us in bridging the gap that gets wider yearly between the available funds and the growing nutritional needs of our senior community. So, the Chumash Casino Business Committee saw the need, stepped forward 2 years ago, and for 2 consecutive years they have taken a leadership role in meeting the needs of our seniors in our nutrition program. They gave $5,000 to support the senior meal program, and last year gave $5,000 to the senior nutrition program golf tournament, and which provided a total, those funds provided a total of 3,640 meals for frail homebound seniors. So on behalf of the board, I'm offering this resolution to commend the Chumash Casino for their generous contribution, their partnership with the Senior Nutrition Program, their willingness to give back to the community and to make a difference in the lives of seniors, and to do so certainly with sincerity and also with great hope that you will continue to do so and be as generous throughout our community as we honor our Chumash relationship in this county with all of our Chumash brothers and sisters. They have very strong history, ancestry, roots, and appreciation throughout our entire county. So it's a pleasure to bring this down and present this.
Thank you, Kathy. I just wanted to say just a couple of words. I know you guys are running late, but as Supervisor Long was saying, you know, the number of meals that we serve in a year now is translating to almost $250,000, and we have been so fortunate in not having to turn back anybody so far, even though our expenses, our food allowances continue to rise. Even our own employees have turned over their dollars to help us keep going. So we're leaving no stone unturned in terms of wanting to use positive recognition to encourage corporate sponsors to step forward and partner just as the Shumash. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Kathy or Mr. Ted.
I'd like to thank you for inviting us in this afternoon, or almost this afternoon. I had a 30-minute speech, but I guess I'm down to a couple of seconds here. This is Richard Gomez. He's a business committee member. On behalf of Chairman Armenta, who couldn't be here today, and the rest of the tribe, we're honored to be a part of this. Over the last 9 years, the tribe has given back to the communities over $5.5 million, and we're very proud of that. We're going to continue being a force in the community, and we look forward to more of these types of gatherings. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead. And again, our apologies, but being from the business committee, you probably weren't terribly bored by the discussion we just had.
And in closing, I'm going to hit him up to try to see what I can do about my $47,000 deficit that I'm facing right now. Thank you.
That's not on the record, is it?
Oh, yes, it is. Thank you all very much for your support. I think so. Yeah, that would be nice. Okay, thank you all very much. That brings us to the end of our agenda. We will now go into closed session on the items listed on the agenda for closed session, and we will adjourn from closed session. Mr. County Counsel, do we believe there will be any announcements?
We do not believe there will be an announcement today.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will see those of you who are not involved next Tuesday.